Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma231 here, back in today to talk about Kagurabachi chapter number 88. This chapter is titled, The First Step. And quickly, before we go and get started with the regularly scheduled chapter review, I just quickly want to say, hey guys, I'm sorry for getting this video out so late. I'm currently recording this on Tuesday night, and do not know if this will be coming out on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. I almost said Thursday morning. I really hope it's not coming out then, but if it is, sorry about that. I've just been very busy in life getting ready to move back into college, and also a new Digimon card game set came out, and yeah, I bought too many boxes, and I'm currently still trying to sort through all of those cards, and that takes a lot of time, not to mention, my manga shelf is all in shambles, trying to get all of that sorted out before I go to college, and also the big whole thing of, I've got to get ready to go to college here pretty soon, right? But either way, I just want to say I'm sorry about that. Hopefully this video will be up in a timely manner after I'm recording it here, but as normal, no promises there. And because I'm really doing this video so late, I really don't have any preamble about this chapter, really. Like, it's a good chapter. I can't wait to talk about it, so I guess talk about it we are going to do. So yeah, we're going to talk about Kagurabachi chapter number 88 today, but of course we need to talk about what happened last time with chapter number 87 of Kagurabachi. And last chapter was this really interesting chapter where it was really focusing on the Hishaku as a group in general, right? As we finally saw all of the members in full design finally, right? We got introduced to the bald Hishaku member, of course the woman Hishaku member who really looks like Faron, as I've recently been turned on to. She got introduced. She was also the one there whenever Kunishige was killed, along with Talo, as I've been calling him, the guy, like, worst genus, as a lot of our people have been calling him, or genus Hishaku, whatever. We got also introduced to the strongest member of the Hishaku, and also Yura was there. We can't forget Yura, right? And Yura went through, traumatized an old guy, used the bathroom, and eventually they teleported down into the Kabanagi headquarters HQ. I think it was like level 5 or something like that. And down there, they ran into Kiri and Uruha, and guess what? We ended off last chapter with the whole idea that Uruha is getting ready to show off what his sorcery is. And last chapter, I had a prediction. Oh man, I think it's going to be something like body heat related or something like that. Not remembering that Kogiri already had that power, but let me just say I was mildly wrong. And by mildly wrong, I mean I was completely wrong, right? But we start off chapter number 88 here in the like monitor room where we see that Izaru is pretty much going over there, and we see the Hishaku, not really Hishaku, I'm not going to call him that, but like one of the Kabunagi, one of the like various traders who is working with Hishaku here, is currently tied up in the corner with all of Izaru's beads, which is honestly a really cool way to sort of like see him like all bind up, like moving around. And we see Izaru's like, hey, where's the Hishaku, right? And we see the main censor guys just like, oh, it's 5 of them. The west wing of the 5th level, right? And Izaru's like, oh, well, after we went to all the trouble of inviting them to the threat elimination grounds where they could really cut loose their heart's content, well, I guess we have no choice. He says, like, hey, contact all of the elite troops. We will surround the Hishaku. As we get a look again at all of the elite troops, of course, we saw these, what was that, like chapter 74 or something like that? And we just get all of their silhouettes here again, and of course we see a few more silhouettes than we really saw last time, right? But as all this happens, main censor guys was like, hey, but we still haven't identified any of the informants at all, right? And Izaru's like, hey, I don't care. There's no time to waste. We'll issue the command and watch how all of them behave, right? All lower-ranking members are still ordered to remain in place. And Censor's like, and all the elite forces, and Izaru's like, hey, what we'll do is we will attack towards the west and keep them away from the center. And like, hey, it's really alright if there's some damage to the building, whatever it takes, we have to eradicate the Hishaku. And that's where we end off our scene with them. And let me just say, I really am liking Izaru as a character. I honestly did like him since the first time we saw him really interact with Chihiro all the way back in the early 40 chapters, like I think it was like 45 or something, whenever we first saw him like really go in and interact with Chihiro. And honestly, I don't understand how anybody can look at Izaru and be like, oh yeah, he is a traitor. There is no way in the slightest that could possibly be anything there, right? But at this point, we cut back into the whole scene of Yura and all the Hishaku pretty much exploding onto the scene, as we see, of course, Uruha and Kiri are sort of like looking in front of them, right? And Yura pretty much is like seeing all this unfolding in front of him, seeing Kiri and Uruha, and he just looks at Uruha being like, oh, he wasn't supposed to be alive. He's like, oh, that damn Sama, right? But either way, Uruha's like, hey, Hakuri, can you fight here in a moment? Hakuri's like, I mean, I can a little bit, right? And I love how Uruha's like, hey, are you sure, though? And Hakuri's like, I mean, somewhat. Like, I can cast Iso every so often, but I just used a string of strong spells, so I really need to rest myself, right? But he also goes ahead and let Uruha know, like, hey, I can still transport everything like I could before. However, all the things I had registered in the past have been reset back down to 0. And this is a very interesting concept. It's like a really fun way to go back and limit Hawker's power after we saw really all the explosiveness that it could do before, right? So he still can use the storehouse. However, he can't transport Chihiro or Samura in. It's like, I was thinking that's what he was going to be doing a long time ago at the beginning of this arc, right? So it really makes sense to why he hasn't summoned Chihiro or Samura in yet. Granted, he doesn't know how the battle between Samura and Chihiro has currently been going, right? And I also love how Uruha's like, oh man, Akira, that's like a really great summary, right? But either way, Uruha just thinks like, hey, there are 7 enemies in front of us and behind us, so I need to stay close to this boy here. I'll protect him and destroy them at the same time. Of course, I saw a lot of people online last time being like, what do you mean, like, 7 people, right? But of course, what he means here is the idea of there are 5 Hishaku members in front of him, and the 2 betrayers of the Kabanagi, I guess traitors, who are standing in the back, pretty much, right? Who are following them into this corridor, right? But either way, here in the moment, Hakuri's like, or no, Hakuri, Uruha's like, alright, excellent then, bring it on. And as he goes through and, like, holds up his 2 fingers to get ready to use sorcery on the transforming guy, we see all of a sudden that he just gets slashed up. It's like 2 vertical slashes happen in the ceiling above him and strike down all the way into this guy's body as well. And as we see these 2 slashes in the ceiling happen, we just see all of a sudden another slash happening, connecting these 2 parallel lines, and another one sort of completing the square here in this moment, right? And as the transformation guy pretty much falls to the ground, blood dripping off of him, we see the entire chunk, this square chunk of the ceiling, just fall straight down to the ground, as we see another Kabanagi member come down from it. As we understand that this is Kiri, as Uruha calls her here, right? This was the female Hishaku member who everybody was losing their minds over when we just saw her face not too long ago in one of the panels of, hey, these are the elite troops, right? And it presumed that we even saw her, so it seems like Izaru went ahead and said, like, hey, this is, hey, Kiri, we need you, part of the elite squads, to go help out Uruha and Hakuri doing all of that various stuff, right? And here in a moment, we pretty much get a full-page panel where she is, like, descending from the sky, just riding on... It's honestly so cool. She's just pretty much traveling on the square chunk of the ceiling as it falls down and just crushes the guy beneath her. It is so crazy. And the best part is, it doesn't get brought up at all for us in the chapter, how this guy just, like, got off-screened here. It's absolutely amazing, right? But as Kiri comes down and falls from the ceiling, we see that she's like, oh, hey, it's Uruha, right? It's like, oh, I heard you were dead or something like that, right? And I really love how Hakuri's like, oh, like, she just calls him Uruha, like, not Mr. Uruha or something like that. But Uruha just says, like, hey, well, as you can see, like, I'm still alive here, Kiri. And she's like, oh, wow, that's a nice surprise, right? As we see that she's, like, a very big and aloof person, right? Well, at this point, Hakuri's like, hey, well, Uruha, like, who is this, right? And Uruha just explains, like, hey, let me go ahead and introduce her to you. This right here is the grandchild of the progenitor of the EI White Purity style, Itsuko Shiraikai Sensei, right? So this is the Izaru Squad's Kiri Shiraikai, which is honestly a little bit of a cool reveal of like, oh man, remember Izaru Shiraikai? We know nothing about him pretty much, and we even do learn a little bit more about him here in this moment, but wow, look at this, Kiri is his granddaughter, right? And I also saw a very interesting theory from Kagurabachi Brazil, who is on Twitter. He is one of the big proponents of the Kagurabachi community. But I saw a very interesting post from him where he pretty much sort of is trying to put 2 and 2 together, be like, oh, well, if you look at this, we know what Shiraikai looks like, we know what Izaru looks like, and we know what Kiri looks like now. So what if all the 3 of them are related, right? We see that Kiri is part of Izaru's squad, and Izaru obviously has Kiri on his squad. They all look alike, so what if Shiraikai's son is Izaru, and then Izaru's daughter is Kiri? That'd be like a nice little logical progression thing there. It's honestly a theory that I want to subscribe to because I think it is pretty good, right? But either way, we go into a little bit of a flashback as we just say like, oh, look at this. This is Shiraikai sensei. He left me half dead 4 times. As you see, this is all from Uruha's perspective, right? As we see that Shiraikai's like, hey, look after my grandchild for a while. If you make her cry, I'll slaughter you, right? And we see that Uruha's like, yeah, the master permitted us to babysit her often, right? As we see both Uruha and Samura pretty much sitting down trying to babysit a young Kiri. And a young Kiri is like, oh man, I'm hungry, right? And both Uruha and Samura really don't know how to do this whole thing, right? But we see one day that Uruha and Kiri are out shopping pretty much. And oh wow, look at that. She's pointing up towards a really long sword. That's pretty interesting, right? And Uruha's just thinking like, hey, I'm really grateful. And we get this whole idea that Shiraikai sensei is currently missing, even though he is probably out living in the mountains somewhere, but he is impossible to contact, right? As you just see him saying like, oh man, I'm so bored of fighting people. Maybe a big bear, like maybe I can fight a really big bear. As you see Kiri's in like, oh no, like that doesn't really matter. My grandfather texts me often, right? As we get this whole idea of where Kiri gets a text from her grandfather, and it's like, oh, hey, this is from Grandpa, there's no subject to it, like, hey, are you doing good? And she's like, oh, I'm good, like, you live a good long life, Grandpa, right? And it's honestly just a really weird comedic scene we get here in the middle of this really big, like, conflict, all these things going on, and honestly, I don't know how I really feel about Kiri with this being her main introduction. I do like the whole idea that Shiraikai is just like off in the mountains alive somewhere, but it's just one of these weird things where this is just a complete 180 tonal shift. And not that it's a bad thing by any means, I do like it, but it just is really weird for how most of Kagurabachi has been going recently when we truly haven't had any comedic moments like this, and it's been so much more gung-ho, gung-ho, gung-ho. Even though I would love to see more comedic things like this in the future, especially surrounding these characters, because of course, ever since we first met Uruha, he's always sort of been like this weird, wacky character in almost every respect of the word, right? And Kiri pretty much explains that Shiraikai isn't necessarily the best person when it comes to, like, treating women how they should be treated, as we get this whole idea where he just says, like, oh yeah, swords are just for men, like, they're too heavy for a woman's slender arms, like, you'd be dead in no time if you picked one up, pretty much, right? As we see that she pretty much explains, like, hey, my grandpa's a total male chauvinist pig when it comes to the sword, and I want him alive and kicking until I have the chance to hack him up here in the moment, right? So a little bit of an interesting note there. So as much as I do like Shiraikai, yeah, maybe he's not the best person at the end of the day, right? But I've also seen a lot of discourse online about this fact too, of maybe it's a way for him to try to protect his granddaughter from picking up the sword, like, our bloodline's been through it enough, like, we don't need you pretty much joining our combat forces too, and joining with all this other stuff, right? So, honestly, I don't really have too much else to say about this part, right? But either way, we then see that all of the Hishaku are sort of like standing around as they're just seeing this big conversation just happen in between Kiri, Uruha, and Hakuri, right? As we even see, like, they're all just looking as Uruha's like, okay, Kiri, this is Hakuri. And she's like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, Hakuri, right? But as all of this is going on, we see the strongest Hishaku member. What do I want to call him? He doesn't look like a Dale, but I think it'd be really funny if I called him Dale or Dale Shaku or something like that, when I know that he doesn't look like a Dale in the slightest, right? But good old Dale comes in here in a moment, and he just pretty much goes and runs through, and starts to run up behind Uruha, and, like, he looks like he's getting ready to strike here in a moment. Uruha notices him, turns around, and Uruha comes over, and jumps up in the air, and roundhouse kicks him right into the side of the hallway where they currently are, really showing an enormous amount of power. And Hawker's like, oh my gosh, like, a kick, like, Uruha has that kind of power. And as we get a better look at Uruha now here in the moment, we see that he's holding the 2 fingers in front of his face, and we see that the eyeliner around his eyes has started to grow and almost cover a bigger portion of his face, as we see Uruha just goes Koen, which we understand it translates to Crimson Reticle here in the moment, right? And we see Hawker's like, oh great, like that's Uruha's sorcery, right? But as all of this goes through, we now cut back over to the Hishaku, where we see the Baldshaku is like, oh, that landed. And he's like, oh, no need to freak out. We'll be fine here, right? As we see the bald guy just opens up to two of his hands, and we see in between them forms one of these demon dragon things that you often see in Japanese mythology, right? Or just Japanese culture in general, right? As he calls it the Mako, demon bite. As we see that it just like starts to be created out of nowhere in Baldshaku's hand, and we see it just almost erupts to an enormous scale and almost gets fired off towards Uruha, right? And as all of this happening, like, it looks like it's getting ready to go to a Tarrey, and Uruha sort of, like, steps in the way and just is like, hey, Kiri, look out for Tarrey for me, as we see that he grabs a sword, and all of a sudden, all of that eyeliner just starts to flare up even more around Uruha's face, and he's like, alright, time to go on the offensive. You go through, uses the EI White Purity style, charges everything up, and cut through the Mako here in the moment, right? And as all this happens, he starts to pretty much go through and start to head towards Yura and all the other Hishaku members, as all of a sudden, Yura just says now, reaches a hand behind him, and I don't necessarily know who does this. I think it is Talo, if I'm not mistaken, but we see that whoever this is holds out a book with a bunch of words on it, right? And opens it up to a random page. And all of a sudden, a sword gets formed out of this page. And we see that Yura goes back, grabs the sword, and starts to pull it out. And as he pulls out this sword out of this book, all of the words on the page go with it, and pretty much seem like they are the things that are actively creating the sword here in the moment. As we see as he finally pulls out the blade, there are no words left on this page, pretty much, right? But of course, Yura now has the sword and is able to block Uruha's EI White Purity style, right? He then just thinks like, oh man, like Uruha's speed is intimidating, but he's lost the destructive force that he had before. His power enables him to fortify one ability at a time. This is very interesting because on one hand, how does he know this? So on one hand, it's like, okay, I get that. Maybe like before the war, like Uruha was a really big name and that's why he was given the blade because he was like, everybody knew about him pretty much. But on the other hand, like, how do you know this, Yura? Like, are you stalking my boy Uruha? Like, that's just weird. But also, is this even true information? I'm guessing that it is, but of course, we really have no concrete idea, right? But either way, we just see Uruha as like, oh, the Hishaku. It's very impressive coming out to do all of your dirty work, right? Did you run out of tricks to kill all of the various sword bearers? We see that Yura's like, oh, and plus, we're running out of time, and I'd appreciate it if you would stop getting in our way. As we see that Uruha's like, oh, like, what are you talking about, right? As it almost looks like they disappear or something like that, as we just see the corridor is almost empty, right? I don't think that's exactly what happens, but it may just be that we are looking over to a blank corridor now, right? And what it simply may be is that, actually, no, I don't really know what's going on here in a moment, right? But all I know now is that Talo just says like, hey, Yura, they keep coming, right? And we see that Uruha's like, hey, you know where you are. You are in the hive now. There'll be plenty of people besides me who will get in your guys' way. And you're like, oh yeah, that's true. In this place, there are all sorts of people. And our job is to create momentary confusion. As we see that Yura's eyes go black again, and as Uruha sees this, he remembers back to they are the exact same eyes as the Sword Saint. And he's like, no, wait, you? But all of a sudden, we cut back over to the Baldshaku, who is pretty much standing on the ground. Granted, all of the characters are standing on the ground, but we see that he's pretty much like making a bunch of these signals on the bottom of the ground, like creating all of these various, what are they called? Mako demons, pretty much, right? As we see they're all swarming around the area, and we get a good look at both Kiri and Uruha, as Kiri is pretty much starting to protect Tarrey. I meant to say Tarrey there, right? But either way, as all of this various fighting is happening, and all of this weird stuff is going on, we just see Yura say, oh, but we have a card. The Death Match. And that is where we end this chapter on the note of what is this death match, and also Kiri is protecting Tarrey. And that's where we end off this chapter number 88 of Kagurabachi. This, man, is just one of those chapters that asks so many more questions than we ever had answers to begin with. Like, okay, going through this entire thing, what is this sorcery where Yura goes and pulls out the sword out of the book? What is all the things about this demon bite sorcery? And also, what is the Baldshaku doing at the end of the chapter? Is he actively creating more of these Mako? Really, what is Uruha sorcery? You have this whole idea of like, oh, hey, it's Crimson Reticle Koen, but like, what fully does that do? How does Yura know this information? Not to mention all the stuff of, oh, hey, Kiri's here now, and oh, her relationship to Shiraikai. Like, there's really so much in this chapter of Kagurabachi, but at the same time, this chapter just goes by in almost an instant, man. Like, I feel like 1 second I'm reading the chapter, and the next second, it's almost already over, and I'm like, wait a second, like, where did the time go reading it? Because it's just one of these things where there's so many battles going on, like, so many things happening, that once we get past all of the Kiri stuff, it's just, like, action going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and honestly, this was just a really fun chapter of Kagurabachi. Definitely wasn't one of my favorites of all time, and I feel like a lot of the things in this chapter will be a really fun thing to come back in a long time to be like, oh, hey, remember when Kiri was first introduced? Oh, after we see that she goes and meets up with Shiraikai sensei, and maybe that's a possible training arc if she's in connection with him. And I don't think Kiri's a bad guy. I don't think that's, like, possible in the slightest. And we just see, like, oh, hey, after Samura presumably dies during this arc, as I believe he will to the Sword Saint, like, maybe Uruha, Hakuri, Chihiro, and Kiri all go, and maybe Iori also, all go up to learn the EI White Purity style, because of course, like, Iori knows a good amount about it from seeing her father. Of course, Uruha knows it, and Chihiro knows it also, and who would learn it from than the master, the guy who created it in the first place. And not to mention all of these other ideas of, this is like the first viewing of like 8 different sorceries, and by 8 different sorceries, I really mean to, there's another thing I should talk about here is that Kiri's sword is just like, it's almost like a big-ass buster sword. Like, it almost looks as tall as Kiri is as a person. And if we take it to be like, oh yeah, she's the typical, like, 5'6", 5'7", like, maybe up to, like, 5'11", or something like that. Or maybe she's even 6 foot. Like, we don't really have any scale to really base anything off of unless Uruha's got a height and, like, see, oh, whenever her and Uruha are standing next to each other, they look to be the same height. So, what could all of that mean, right? But she's got this very long sword without the sheath, so what is her sword style? Because, of course, we've seen, like, the Reagan 1 sword style from the, Bloodshed Hotel manager, what was his name? Sengoku, if I'm not mistaken. And, yeah, General Manager Sengoku. I'm glad I have Kagurabachi knowledge like that, right? But, like, does she use something like that? Or, like, she's obviously not using the White Purity style because she doesn't have a sheath, and also this is just a really big sword. Even though the final page of the chapter, it looks like she's holding her hand on the sword like the White Purity style. Like, is this just, like, another White Purity style, not the White Purity style? And we also mute Discord, but, like, there's so many questions I have in this chapter, and honestly, that is probably this chapter's best strength. Was it an amazing chapter of Kagurabachi? Yes, it was good. But also, it's one of these that makes me question every little thing about this series. At the end of the day, how can I be upset with that? But yeah, for all of that out of the way, I want to thank you all of you guys for watching this video on Kagurabachi chapter number 88. Like I said, I do not know when I'm going to get this video uploaded. It may be Tuesday night, as when I'm recording this, I've got 2 more hours to make that happen, at least on the East Coast. I mean, granted, if you're in, like, London or Britain or really anywhere else in the world, this video would have already come out on Wednesday for you, but at least for my schedule, this may be coming out on Tuesday night. So, maybe, or it could be out on Wednesday. We'll just have to see how all of that goes through and works. But if you did enjoy this video on Kagurabachi chapter number 88, well, I've covered Kagurabachi all the way since chapter number 44, so I've talked about it like 45 times or something like that, which is absolutely insane to think about, right? But all those videos will be linked down in the description box down below and also on the end card of this video. And if you did enjoy this video, well, maybe you wouldn't mind helping me out, liking the video, subscribing, leaving me a comment on what you guys thought about this Kagurabachi video. And yeah, with all that out of the way, I will catch you guys next time for Kagurabachi chapter number 89. And hey, we get a chapter next week, of course, chapter number 89, but then we have a break week. Of course, it's Golden Week in Japan, so we're going to have to wait a little while until we get to the next one. But yeah, with all that out of the way, I will catch you guys then. This will be Glowplasma 231, or I guess just Glowplasma now. I don't brand myself as 231 anymore, but I said 231 so many times a long time ago, it's going to be hard to break that habit, right? And who knows, it may also be hard to break the habit of being like, man, Uruha's so cool, I like this guy, and honestly, I like Kiri's design too. I know I'm not one of those Kagurabachi YouTubers who's constantly sitting here being like, man, this character's pretty hot, or this character's pretty cool, as most of the people on the Kagurabachi podcast I'm a part of are, the Kabnagi headquarters. I almost forgot to mention them, but go check out the podcast I'm on. We're recording a new one tomorrow, and I still have the one from last week to edit and put up, so joke's on me, I guess, but either way, I'll catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma 231 or Glowplasma, signing out. I'll catch you guys next time.